Hi, I'm tempted to call this weekend cement boots, and I'll explain why I would like to call it cement boots, but I will consider it and think about what I will call it. So this week, interestingly enough, continued with an aspect where the beings were at is so deep in the mind and the story. It's like that connection is like cement boots. And we are our own mafia that is tossing us in the water with the cement boots, and it's horrendous. And it comes from mind and attitude and how it's seen. And in that process of cement boots, we actually don't see who we are. And the story can go so deep and so solid, and always looking back to see why it is the way that it is. And again, this time, which I find quite beautiful, is the energy of the being seeing it tends to go, we need to open up and bring in a way of seeing yourself so you can move forward. And those cement boots belongs to an old skin that you think you are, but you don't live in there anymore. And in doing that, the openness in seeing self and going next and focusing on how you want to live, how you want life to be, rather than why isn't my life the way I want it to be? Which is, I always find that the answer to why is the booby prize. So, in that happening, what continued to show up was the amazingness of who we are. And when we stand in that, the process of being in wonder, maybe I'll call it wondering this weekend, because in that openness, in the openness of wonder and not knowing, that is such a wonderful place to be in. If we actually knew, it kind of gets boring. There is a knowing. And that knowing pretty much is, all right, matrix, game, whatever it is, but to wake up every day to say, I wonder who I am today. And in the connection, to really see the amazingness of being here in 3D land at all, matrix, game, whatever. How extraordinary that through that process and this physical beingness, we get to see and experience who we are today. My God, I didn't know I could stand in that. Or that was wonderful to have that interaction. And to do that, as we've discussed in the past, takes an overview position. If you get an overview, and even with the overview, to be able to be open enough to allow the download to come, and to be still enough until it does, and that the stillness itself is an okay place. What a privilege to be in stillness, to not be drawn out through necessity, and even in necessity, to find the stillness in necessity. It's so precious. So one of the people I saw this weekend, or during the week actually, she's a healer with so many tools in her back pocket, so many things to access. And what was seen is that in that and in the being with others, to constantly be thinking what next or whatever it is, to be in the flow of that, there are times when stillness is needed. To go into the silence and deeper and wait for it to come, to be shown. It does. I mean, there are times when an essence comes up, for instance, or whatever. A word may show, but that word, it needs to be sat in, because that word or what it shows takes a being with to be silent in, so that that which matches the energy and the parable, I would say, for that being in that situation arrives, and it's profound. So to be able to stop and take time to really allow the best to come forward, and when it does, half the time it doesn't come from us, it arrives. And in the arriving, the sharing becomes a way of observing with another, with what has come. And that makes the process so enjoyable. It can be a discussion with a friend where that takes place, looking at a flower, being with a tree. It's there. And if we're silent enough, we will feel that connection. That is a dialogue. That's always there with us. We're never alone. So with these cement boots, someone arrived with, headaches, spinning out, tingling in hands. And what showed up was that it actually had nothing to do with her, but had taken over a form of cement boots when we stand in others' issues to the extent where we become that, which is not really useful for anyone, including the person that we're doing it for, or the being that we're doing it for. And what had showed up is this pattern of the grasshopper pattern, where you so want to get ahead that you jump from one thing to another, and then you're in another, and because it doesn't happen quickly enough, you think maybe it's something else that'll be the solution, and jumping all over the place. And when we do that over decades, it's very disconcerting, because staying in the presence and seeing what that decision is, staying with it and being at peace with it, then we move forward. And before you know it, that which we feel inside that projects outside actually comes to us in the revealing of it. While we move towards it, it meets us. And that wasn't present. So in the partner. So looking at what that was actually spoke volumes. Because when her partner was very young, and being the youngest of a family with a gap in between, the parents obviously were, we're kind of over this, kids, we're over this. And the father happened to take away something he had a very deep connection to, and said, look, you're grown up now. That just has to be put aside. You can't do that anymore. And it was like ripping his soul out. And that pattern has been seen over time, but this time it showed itself in a way where the reason the grasshopping was there is because he very much wanted to play. And if I have this in place and this in place, I can play. And people do that with retirement. When I retire, I will play. So I'll stay with this until I can play again. It reminded me of when I was young. I was a real little shit. And we had to do jobs by 12 noon. We weren't allowed to play with our friends until it was 12 noon. And if the job wasn't done by 12 noon, we weren't to go to our friend's place to play. So grumbling, the world's unfair, this is terrible, all that stuff was going on in my head. And of course, I would grumble until 11:30, do the job, be over and done with, so I could go play with my friend. And sometimes we still play those games of procrastinating until we can play or we feel like it. That's a lot of wasted time. And once you're present, it's all play. And how do we find that continuation of play? But understanding that his desire was to play, and the moving over the decades to put everything in place so nothing else had to be done so I can play. Well, as adults, there's always something that's next. So it comes down to our attitude and how we see it, and if possible, turn it into play or bring it into presence, and before you know, it's over and the time is yours. I often find that waiting for the weekend, can't wait for the weekend, and then the weekend comes, 5 minutes of doing nothing and you're bored and you want to find something to do. So we're moving beings. That actually moved to someone who I saw, who, in not seeing self, ended up with cement boots. And it was very tricky because this being was born with a vast capacity, which no doubt was accumulated over whether it's many timelines coming together or many lifetimes, who knows. But she had this capacity to make things nothing. That's both a gift and a curse. Because if you can make things nothing, you can put up with terrible situations and just make it nothing and end up making things nothing for everyone else while nothing really works for you. And she hadn't seen that. She hadn't seen this vast capacity to make things nothing. And her being, when we first started working, there was this massive amount of productivity. So not only was she able to make things nothing, she also had this capacity to be productive. So to be productive with the nothing all the time, but not see it, is almost like not being here for yourself. So in the seeing of that, and to walk away with that capacity of productive and the ability to make things nothing, in the moving forward, to see that and make it work for herself, because it's a profound gift to be productive and the ability to make it nothing. Very tricky. And the last being that was seen, the cement boots, in many ways was in the desire to take care of her health and her well-being, because that started to show up in her life. Because in the past, raising kids, taking care of everything, things are full on, so much is going on. And to come out of that and say, finally there's room now I can see to look after myself. And then to go to different modalities, it can become like cement boots. Because to get all these tests done and look at all of it, it's like a list of what's not okay with you can show up, and it's going to take a long time and you've got to stay with it, and this is what you've got to do, and then let's do this test and let's see if that's going to work. We balanced seeing where she's at and the openness that has arrived, and that sense of self and the pride of what is achieved and where it is now showing is a form of metabolizing, rather than this whole large pattern which is almost undigestible. even if done in small steps along the way. So in connection to that self and seeing it and enjoying who she is and how she interacts and what she sees in her interaction with others and the joy that brings. When we tested up the supplements afterwards, which was quite a few and very expensive, only 3 were really of benefit to her at this stage moving forward. But the joy of metabolizing self, whether it's emotionally, physically, nutritionally, financially, you name it, when that's in place, everything digests better. The breathing is better. That moves the digestion. So drop the cement boots. It's mind. It'll be mind. And in that, awaken to that wonder, that opening, and allow it to arrive and enjoy. The card that showed up, we've had it before, it's awakening. Rousing from the inactivity of the past, I call that cement boots, or having held yourself back, cement boots. Now is the time to wake up to what can be achieved and shake yourself into action. Shake off the cement boots. Awaken to your potential. Awaken to your love. Awaken to yourself. Lots of love. Bye.